I just heard something. Did anyone catch that? Over. Do you copy? Mayday? We've got a ranger down feeding circle. Wolves area attacking. We need immediate backup. She's net responded. Ellis, she fed them, named them, protected them then during a routine of feeding. They encircled her a pack of wolves animals she had spent years rehabilitating, turned deadly inmates, a quiet Montana. Sanctuary Becomia kill zone, her co-workers say. She was careful, her supervisors say. It wasn't thinkable, but the evidence told a different story. What caused these wolves raised in captivity to attack the very ranger who nurtured them? Was it hunger territory, or something much darker? This is the story of Park Ranger June Ellison, the horrifying moment when the wild reminded us it cannot be tamed if you are passionate about wildlife. True stories and the hidden dangers of human-animal relationships. You're in the right place. Welcome to the Animal Quest channel. A park ranger, she was the heart of Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary, nestled deep in the pino-covered slopes of northern Montana. Bear Valley had long been a haven for injured and orphaned wildlife. But for June, it was more than a job. It was a calling. She joined this sanctuary at just 24 years old. Straight out of the University of Montana, where Esh studied wildlife biology over the next decade, she rose through the ranks not through ambition, but through devotion. She had a quiet, steady, pre-Cinchano fanfare. Just the kind of ranger who showed up early, stayed late, and never hesitated to sleep in the observation cabin during wolf pup recovery season. By 2024, she'd become the senior wolf rehabilitation specialist at Bear Valley, was known among her peers as the Wolf Whisperer. She didn't just study the wolves, she lived with them. She knew each one by name, by habit even, by sound. Her journal, found later in her cabin, held meticulous notes on feeding routines, pack dynamics, and even the emotional behavior of individual wolves. Other rangers would often say, if June was there, the wolves would stay calm. Shehad raised most of them from pups, animals abandoned after their packs were poached or displaced by wildfires. Wolves like Brutus, the dominant male, and Luna, the shy submissive female, shed-nursed through a broken leg to outsider Stee, were predators. But to June they were her life's work. She had a bond with every wolf, said Elijah Barlow, a fellow ranger who worked with her for 6 years, knew them better than anyone, better than we did sometimes. Honestly, may better than she should have. That and trust, the very thing that made her legendary at Bear Valley, was also the one thing that would ultimately liberate her, because as she poured herself into understanding wolves, she may have forgotten one truth: that every expert learns eventually. A wolf may accept your presence, but it never forgets what it isn't. In the wilderness of Bear Valley, nature doesn't give second chance. Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary is no side attraction. It's 140 acres of fenced wilderness carved into the terrain of northeastern Montana, where logging roads fade and nothing and radio signals die beneath towering alpine ridges. Established in 1997, the sanctuary was built to give a second chances to animals that had no booziness. Surviving wolves hit by carsorphan, pups found beside traps, pack shattered by poaching, wildfire, or human encroachment. As of spring 2024, Bear Valley was home to 12 gray wolves ranging in age from 7-month-old. Risquesto older alphas nearing the end of their lives. Unlike traditional zoos, Bear Valley was hands-off on paper. Wolves lived in semi-wild enclosures. Human contact was minimized, but feeding had to happen, and that's where the linens started to blur. Each evening shortly Bear dusk, the rangers would make their way to what was called the feed-in circle, a clearing just inside, then a Rithwest enclosure. It was a carefully structured process. Meat drops placed at designated points, wolves called in with signals, rangers staying just outside the perimeter. In theory, it was safe. In practice, it relied heavily on trust, and no one trusted more than John Ellis. Junifon insisted on doing the feeding herself, not out of ego, but because she believed she could sense the wolves' moods. She'd spend a few extra minutes watching them eat, noting who fed first, who hung back, who showed signs of agitation or illness. Other rangers followed protocol. June read the animals, but over time, the line between observation and habituation began to erode. Even well-meaning feeding can condition wolves to people, said Robert Kessler, a wildlife biologist who consulted with the sanctuary in 2022. Wolves are intelligent, socially complex animals when they associate a human with food, especially a familiar human. Thought neural pathways don't just dissolve, not Just feeding them, you're becoming part of their pack structure. Whether you mean to or not, by early September 2024, June had become more than a feeder. She was a fixture in the Wolves routine, familiar, predictable, unarmed, and in the animal kingdom predictability is not always safety, sometimes it's opportunity. Bear Valley had no cell service, no permanent security just fences, a few radios, and the unspoken belief that if something ever went wrong, help would come to late June. New Therisks, but she also believed in the mission. She believed in her wolves, and in September 14, 2024, she walked into the feeding circle one last time, not knowing that the pack, her pack, was a buto. Make a decision, but not all danger warnings were ignored. Reading. The weeks leading up to the attexidal shifts in behavior began to ripple through the wolf enclosures at Bear Valley. To an untrained observer, they might have looked like routine or restless, but two seasoned rangers, the wolves, were sending signals that began with proximity. Wolves, who once hovered at the edges of the clearing during feedings, were now drawing closer. Brutusque's dominant male started arriving early and holding eye contact longer than usual. One of the younger males, Tagger, was spotted several times lingering north boundary fence at odd hours. Then came the breaches twice. In late August, wolves approached the outer staff camp boldly one night. Luna was seen dragging away a bag of freeze-dried meat from Atable left unattended. Another evening, two rangers were forced to retreat to their cabin after three wolves circled death. Fire pit tails, stiff bodies, tents. It wasn't just curiosity, said Staff Ranger Kelsey Vaughn, who had worked alongside June. For nearly 5 years, they'd circle us slowly. They knew we were unarmed. You could feel it in your gut. It was no longer just observation. It was testing. Incidents were logged formally. The sanctuary kept a detailed incident booking, the main office, and by September entries had spiked August 28th, beyond feed zone, boundary novocalization. September 3rd, Luna observed poing, Ford cooler near cabin. Porch staff advised. September 10th, supper caproached ranger tent during night, backed off after spotlight. Each time June Ellis reviewed the entries, and each time she responded with calm confidence. Our wolves being wolves, she routined the margin of one report. Their arresting presence, not aggression. Manton routines stay predictable. Some staff didn't agree. I told her we need dead-toe change the schedule, maybe alternate feeders, Kelsey added. But June, she had that certainty, like she knew them. She said changing patterns would confuse Thepak and escalate tension, but science had long warned against suckover confidence. In 2002, Dr. Mark Mickney, Department of Fish and Game, published a study analyzing hundreds of Ophiman wolf encounters. His conclusion was shocking. Wolves that become habituated human presence and food sources can begin testing boundaries. Once a wolf no longer sees humans as a threat, it begins to see them as opportunity. And in Bear Valley, the wolves had crossed the threshold. They weren't curious anymore. They were calculating, and June Ellis was still walking into the feeding circle every night alone with no weapons. Deterrence, no backup, because in Hermond she wasn't entering enemy territories, was coming home, but for the wolvest boundary between human and prey had already blurred, and on September 14, that line would disappear completely. September 14, 2024. A Saturday, the sun had already begun to dip behind the ridge, casting long shadows over the tree line at Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary. It was 6:03 p.m. by the ranger station clock when June Ellis grabbed meat buckets from the cooler rough-kits of elk and venison collected from Ellison. Roadkill's salvage run stacked in metal tins. She loaded them into a plastic sled, tugged on her gloves, and radioed, heading to Circle 12 Wolves. A lack counted for those would be the last words anyone heard from her, a junior staffer. Logan Brewer offered to assist with the feed. June declined, just as Shielways had. They know me, she said. If he had, someone knew it could spook them. At 6:11 p.m., June entered the northwest enclosure through Gate C, the rusted service entrance that led directly into a feeding circle, a 40-foot wide clearing surrounded by tall pine and low brush. The gate latched shut behind her with a metallic click. The wolves were already there: Brutus, Luna, Tagger, and Nini. Others scattered loosely in the shadows, watching silent June follow it. Same routine she'd carried out for early a decade. Dropped the first bucket, move clockwise, call out names softly, placed the food at the edges, shouldn't make eye contact. She never reshed her voice. was calm. She reached the third drop point, Brutus's spot, and slowly backed away. Then something changed. Brutus didn't wait. The dominant Malus stepped forward, not toward the meat but toward June. His ears were flat, tail high, low rumble in his throat. June stopped walking. She raised one hand instinctively, not to command, just tap pause. Her body tensed for a moment. There moved, Lugan stabbed, and Tagger came from the side. Fast, June turned too late. With a flash of gray and black wolves surged forward, first one, then three, then all of them. The circle collapsed around her in seconds. Chas screamed. Not a long scream, just a sharp, startled cry that cut through the stillness and carried as far as theater camp. Help was all anyone. Hard sounds that followed were primal snarling paws scraping dirt. Metal buckets knocked sideways Logan's staffer wolves. June tried to retreat, tried to find the gate, but the wolves didn't thess. They didn't give chase, they surrounded. It was not a chase, it was addict down. The ranger, who had fed them, touched them, named them, was now on the ground. The pack lunged, and in less than 20 seconds, the trust built over 10 years shattered beneath teeth. Moment, the pack attacked Cheoceraptid at Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary back at the staff camp, just 200 wide away. Ranger Logan Brewer was preparing gear for a routine patrol. Suddenly, over the radio, a chilling burst-off static was pierced by a desperate Tevis mayday. Ranger down, wolves at a feeding circle need immediate backup. Logan dropped his gear and sprinted. Gatesy adrenaline surging through his veins. Moments later, fellow Ranger Maya Torres joined him, and together they hurried into the enclosure, shouting and banging metal buckets to startle the wolves. The pack scattered with snarls, retreating into the dense forest beyond the feeding grounds. They found June Ellis lying motionless on the dirt, her uniform torn, deep puncture wounds bleeding from her arms and legs. Her breathing was shallow, eyes closed. Logan immediately radioed for emergency medical support. Within minutes, the ranger station's medic, Dr. Simon Caldwell, arrived on scene, beginning triage. His wounds were steady, but his face grim, severe lacerations. Possible internal bleeding, Simon reported into the radio. Meanwhile, an urgent call went out to the NRIST medical evacuation unit based in Helena, Montana. A 5-minute flight, Awaith's sun, had completely set by the time. Helicopter, its flashing red and white lights cutting through the thick darkness, arrived over to Bear Valley. Paramedics loaded June carefully into a stretcher, stabilizing her vital signs. ASE blades of the helicopter Rohero sirens echoed as the chopper headed toward St. Patrick's Regional Hospital, the closest trauma center equipped for critical care back on the ground. Bear Valley's team was left in stunned silence, shaken to their core by the attack. They never imagined possible. June Ellis, the woman who had spent years nurturing a fragile bond with a wild pack, was now fighting for her life, despite the rapid medical evacuation and intensive care. June Ellis succumbed to her injuries within hours. Official cause of death was severe bite wounds, compounded by arterial beating injuries too extensive for even the best trauma treatment. The news reverberated through Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary and deeply impacted the wider conservation community. An immediate investigation was launched by the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in coordination with the Federal Wildlife Service investigators at the feeding circle, following morning meticulous acting. The scene, tracks, and scat samples confirmed what was already fared. The entire wolf pack had been involved in the attack. Experts noted the wolves exhibited clear signs of conditioning habituation to human presence in feeding, which blurred the natural boundaries between wild and Molin. Caretaker, the evidence washingly familiar officials drew comparisons to the infamous 2005 Carnegie wolf attack in Alaska, where a similarly habituated pack fatally mauled. Wildlife biologist during feeding both cases revealed the dangerous consequence when wild predators lose their natural wariness of humans, leading to tragic, sometimes fatal outcomes. The investigation concluded thought. While June's dedication and experience were unquestioned, the delicate line between trust and danger had been tragically crossed. Some weeks after June Ellis's tragic death, Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary underwent immediate and significant changes. The sanctuary's leadership and consultation with the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks moved swiftly to prevent any repeat of fatal attack. One of the first measures was the installation of electric fencing around the feeding circle, designed to create a physical barrier between staff, and the wolves at the same time. All direct feeding of the wolves was suspended indefinitely. Public safety warnings were posted through the house. Sanctuary and access to the feeding areas was heavily restricted. The media attention was intense. At a press conference in Helena, Governor Linda Prescott addressed the state's wolf management policies. Her voice carrieth weight of urgency and responsibility. We mourn the loss of Ranger June Ellis, a dedicated public servant. This tragedy highlights the need for stricter guidelines on human interaction with wild predators. We are recommitted to reforms that protect Bathurst citizens and wildlife experts. Wade and Dr. Nathan McNee, a respected biologist specializing in predator behavior, explained the underlying danger. Once wolves start associating humans with food, their natural instincts change. They become bolder, more aggressive. So Metamus Angeli. So this is not just a matter of animal behavior. It's a serious public safety concern. The sanctuary's new policies aim to restore the wildness of the wolves, emphasizing non-country rehabilitation and remeta monitoring. June Ellis's death marked a turning point, not only for Bear Valley but for wildlife management across Terrigen. It was a harsh reminder that no matter how close the bond, wild animals remain unpredictable forces of nature. The tragic death of June Ellis centriples far beyond Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary. Wildlife experts around the country reiterated a crucial sometimes truth: feeding wild animals in controlled sanctuaries carry a serious risks. Dr. Nathan McNee emphasized feeding wildlife disrupts natural behaviors. Habituation breaks down animals' innate fear of humans, which is a vital survival mechanism. This loss became a stark reminder for park rangers, wildlife rehabilitators, and the general public alike. Public safety officials set clear guidelines: never feed wild animals under any circumstances. Wild animals are inherently unpredictable. A safety bulletin warned even those raised in sanctuaries can revert to their instincts in moments of stress or confusion. Habituation, while afternoon intentional, can provoke aggressive or predatory behavior, putting both humans and animals at risk. June Ellis's story, a cautionary tale, one that reinforces delicate balance between compassion and caution in wildlife conservation. Her dedication to the wolves was undeniable, but the lesson remains: nature must be respected on its own terms. The loss of June Ellis deeply affected her family, friends, and fellow rangers at Bear Valley Wildlife Sanctuary. A memorial service was held on a crisp August morning, surrounded by the wilderness she loved so fiercely. Her colleagues gathered to honor her life and dedication. A plaque was unveiled near the sanctuary's main entrance, inscribed with words that captured her spirit: in memory of June Ellis Guardianoff, the wild protector of the pack. Ranger Logan Brewer, visibly moved, spoke softly but with conviction: June saved countless wolves through her care and commitment. Won't let her death be in vain. Her legacy will guide us to work safer, smarter, and with the utmost respect. Worthwhile though June is gone, her story remains a powerful reminder of the fragile bond between humans and nature, built on respect, caution, and deep love. June Ellis's story is a solemn reminder that the wild is not ours. Totem respect for nature's boundaries is essential, not just for our safety but for the survival of the creatures we strive to protect. If you found this in-depth true story documentary stuff, please like, subscribe, share, and activate notifications to stay informed on more compelling wildlife stories. Thanks for watching, and see you.